Hi, beautiful people. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Dee. Welcome if you're new. So the Winter Olympic has been underway for more than 3 days now. And for the geopolitical reason, along with all the time differences, I haven't been able to catch up with it, nor do I have the motivation to do so in the future. But I did see this big piece of news came out of Beijing that have been pretty much covered by most of the mainstream Western media. It's about this now American Chinese young girl, Zhu Yi, who failed at her ice skating game and then just got chewed out, completely demolished by the Chinese netizens on Weibo, along with other probably social media sites. And even though I see some validity to these Western reports, I still don't really see them explain the root cause of the problem that well. I don't think they really got to the bottom of the issue. I'm going to read through this article on Daily Mail that reports on this news pretty in detail, and also adding my own commentary along the way. So the title reads, California-born figure skater Beverly Zhu, 19, is slammed on Chinese social media after finishing last on the ice, having given up her U.S. citizenship to compete for Beijing in Winter Olympics. So recently, this practice has been pretty common for sort of this reverse immigration. The Chinese government and the Chinese national sports team will go out of their way to recruit foreign nationals to go back to China to compete for the Chinese team, to boost the scores or the performance. It's pretty common now. More and more, you see this in all sorts of sports, and now it's pretty much kind of more accepted in China because we're just seeing a lot of foreign athletes. And this is not to say that because they just give up their citizenship to compete for China this one time, that they will lose their citizenship forever, because there's something that not a whole lot of people know. For a lot of countries, if you give up your citizenship once, you can still have a chance, or I don't know, it might vary in different countries, but at least one chance to reverse it. So it's still very much possible, and also pretty much commonly practiced to get your citizenship back once you are done competing for China or other countries. So just because some athletes give up their citizenship doesn't mean they're no longer able to travel back and then become a citizen again. So just put it out there. The American-born Chinese figure skater who gave up her U.S. citizenship and changed her name to compete for China at the Winter Olympic in Beijing fell twice during the women's short program team event, to the scorn of many her adopted country. Beverly Zhu, 19, who changed her name to Zhu Yi, finished with the lowest score of the event at Beijing's Capital Indoor Stadium after she failed to land a jump and fell on the opening combination, and botched another jump later in her short program. I mean, just to be honest, this gotta be like hurt physically. So I really, just on a personal level, I would never chew an athlete out for failing, because I used to be a track runner, and I knew how difficult it is to maintain a perfect score all the time. Even though you might be at the peak of your body status, there's still a chance that you might perform less ideal at the most important competition. This happens all the time with athletes, and nobody's gonna win forever. So I think that could be a part of the reasons that in China, because sports has been extremely politicalized, and because we still adapt the Soviet Union central programming model for sports, especially when it comes to the Olympic Games, people hold a lot of expectations for these Olympians, and they think in a way, the performance of these Chinese athletes represent Chinese people's face. Therefore, a lot of people connect their own identity, their own national identity with how well these athletes perform. And I really don't agree with that. But that's just the reality in China. Skating to Paint It Black by the Rolling Stones. Zhu scored 47.3 after she tumbled on her first combination flip triple toe loop jump, crashed into the wall, and bungled her triple loop later in the set. That's got to be so kind of embarrassing for anybody. It shouldn't be, but for as anybody who is in that sports, being under that much spotlight and pressure, it's got to be devastating, especially for a young kid like her. Her performance knocked China from 3rd to 5th place in the team event. Zhu decided in 2018 to compete for China in the Olympics. She changed her name and gave up her American citizenship. However, she is still facing criticism for not being fluent in Chinese. This, I do have something to say because it's not because of her individually. It's more because of what she represents. She represents the upper Chinese elite class in China that can bypass every bit of hardship that everyday Chinese in the system has to suffer through in order to go up and in order to get a better life. Because these elites will have enough resources and all the money to send their kids overseas or get Western education and not having to face Gaokao, the so-called involution culture in the job market. And therefore, they get to have a really great treatments by the country. Meanwhile, not having to put in the amount of efforts that everyday Chinese has to. And because she doesn't speak Chinese, that just says in Chinese people's mind, if you don't even speak Chinese, then you're not a part of this country and you're not really Chinese. And then for you to go back and take the best of our resources, that kind of hurts a lot of people's ego because it reminds them of the opportunities that they miss because they aren't from an elite family, which I will talk about more in detail later. Her poor debutante performance also now has some questioning why the California-born skater was picked to represent China instead of a figure skater who was born in this country. So this other skater that was mentioned here, her name is Chen Hongyi. So I looked up both of these girls' performance on ice. It indeed showed that the other Chinese girl, Chen Hongyi, actually was better at skating, had better ranking than Zhu Yi in various competitions. I will list them out on here. And that is why a lot of the netizens are just so angry at this 19-year-old girl, Zhu Yi, because what she represents is this concept called 鸠占鹊巢 in Chinese. This other figure skater that the article mentioned, Chen Hongyi, she's actually from a normal family from Beijing, and I looked her up online on Chinese media, and I found this report that compared the two girls' family condition, and you can see that in Chen Hongyi's family, it was super simple, and you would probably call it lower middle class family in Beijing. Her family really did everything they can to provide for Chen Hongyi to become a professional athlete like she is today, to get to this point where she can be elected to be an Olympian. But the committee picked Zhu Yi over her because of Zhu Yi's dad. And in this article, they will tell you who Zhu Yi's dad is. Zhu was born in Los Angeles to Chinese parents and given the name Beverly and grew up with a privileged background. Her father, Zhu Songchun, is an award-winning scientist who joined the staff at Beijing's Peking University in 2020. He previously worked at the UCLA. I looked up his annual salary. Just from the public record, he's making almost $500,000 a year. So as you can see, it's pretty effortless for him to provide for his daughter to be a professional athlete, and as expensive as ice skating can be, it's really just a piece of cake for his family, for her family. I saw that for Zhu Songchun, he became the head of I think the computer faculty in Peking University. It's definitely not just a 1%er thing. It's a 0.1%er thing in China if you're able to reach that level. So just ultra elite family. The Olympian started figure skating when she was 7 years old. I saw that she decided to go with this sports because she was interested and she saw how pretty other girls really looked when they were ice skating. That's why she wanted to become it. That's why she wanted to do it as well, and then find out she actually had a talent for it. In 2018, she won the novice division while competing at the United States Figure Skating Championships in San Jose, California. Later that year, she made the decision to represent China in the Olympics, a move that followed the nation's efforts to attract top athletes to their team. Zhu, during her first session skating for China, finished 4th at the 2019 Chinese Figure Skating Championships in Harbin. She then won bronze at the Sophia Trophy. The young skater also took 11th place on her ISU Grand Prix debut at the 2009 Cup of China. Well, it was in the same Cup of China competition. The other Beijing girl, Chen Hongyi, actually got the 9th place, higher than Zhu Yi. So this article didn't mention it, but I just thought it would be worthwhile to throw in there. Analysts argue it was unlikely that Zhu would be in medal contention during the Winter Olympic Games. She faced a lot of pressure ahead of her debut. After her last place performance, the skater was reportedly inconsolable. "I'm upset and a little embarrassed," Zhu told the media. "I counted over and over again last night to see how many points I need to collect today to help my team advance. I do feel a lot for this girl. I mean, it's really not her fault to be born into a privileged family. I mean, again, it's really, I'm happy for her to grow up in such a comfortable and loving environment. It's just really unfortunate how the system works that allows this sort of things happen, because it's really not her fault to be the daughter of a world-renowned scientist. But at the same time, think about the other Chinese girl, Chen Hongyi. How can you take somebody's dream away when that's one of the only hopes they have to climb the social class ladder? Because honestly, for a girl like Chen Hongyi, if you're from a lower middle class family in China, chances are there aren't that many pathways for you to go up a ladder. And this is the only chance. And then how can you be deprived of this opportunity simply because your dad isn't as renowned as a scientist from America? And it's truly like this game has nothing to do with your family situation. It's about how well you do in your particular game. And in this case, to be fair, honestly, the other girl should have taken this spot. However, it's really unfortunate that the nepotism culture is so deep-rooted in China. And this happens across the board. And there's this called Pindie culture. Pindie means compete for a better dad. If you have a better dad, it's much better than more efforts you put in to get something. So that's really unfortunate. I guess I felt a lot of pressure because I know everybody in China was pretty surprised with the selection for ladies single. And I just really wanted to show them what I was able to do, but unfortunately I didn't, she added. Probably some guilt in this statement. Despite her failed performance, Chinese figure skater and two-time world bronze medalist Jin Bo Yang, 24, has asked that people grace Zhu with kindness. Zhu is a hardworking girl and should not be blamed for her first performance on the Olympic stage, whether it's good or bad, he told Xinhua News. Jin, who argued it's understandable for an Olympic debutant to fumble in their performance, believed the young skater was likely under a lot of pressure. That's really true. And I do think she shouldn't be the one that people go after. The system should be. Like, who made the choice? Who selected her over the other Chinese girl, and they should be held responsible in this case, or at least more responsible. However, many Chinese citizens didn't take well to Zhu's fumble with sympathy and instead blasted her on social media. Zhu Yi has fallen was trending on Weibo, with some users slamming her for alleged false patriotism. Please let her learn Chinese first before she talks about patriotism, one Weibo user wrote. So this can be an issue because the fanatical nationalism and patriotism has been more and more of an issue in China now. Even when they talk about international students Chinese students who study abroad, when they talk about these students, international students, including myself, they have almost this bitterness and anger. I guess this is pretty common not just in China, but also in South Korea and Japan, like these East Asian countries. When you look at somebody who's ethnically East Asian, especially whose family used to be actual Chinese, and yet they don't speak a word of Chinese, you feel like you feel uncomfortable about it because somehow or some way it reminds you of the stuff that they don't have to suffer because of their experience, because of their absence in the Chinese system. And yet you have to go through every single bit of it, like going through the schooling system, going through the military training, mandatory trainings, internship, and just the overall experience. You feel cynical towards the foreigners and towards the ethnical Chinese who can't speak Chinese. Honestly, I used to feel this way too because I don't understand how come they don't even have to learn Chinese. Meanwhile, they drop off from America or somewhere from the West in China, and then all of a sudden you have to treat them better. You have to treat them with extra care simply because they don't speak Chinese. They only speak English or other languages, and they got special treatments, better treatments than you, an ethnic Chinese who's actually legal resident of this country. But to say that, I'm not agreeing with this slamming of somebody's character simply because of your own projection, your own issues. All right, next one, next user's comment. This is such a disgrace, another commented, gaining 11,000 likes from other users. But the saving grace is a lot of people were still pretty supportive of her, or at least telling others to leave Zhu Yi alone because, this happens all the time. And we have seen this happen to so many other Chinese athletes before with Liu Xiang, with the one-time legend at 110 meters hurdles game, and then Li Xiaopeng, the prince of gymnastics. They were both famous Olympians who won gold medals for China, and yet being ruined basically by the backlash from fellow Chinese because they failed at the later games. So I really hate it when something like this happens to any individual athlete. China has recruited at least a dozen foreign-born athletes in recent years to compete on its Olympic teams, with Zhu being one of them. Analysts allege the social media attack on the performer highlights the pressure naturalized athletes face while competing under the Chinese flag. That is true. So I do want to say to people who are thinking about giving up their citizenship to compete or work for China, This is a decision you need to carefully make. Don't just think about the benefits you will get, but also think about the consequences, because sometimes they might be more than you can take. And think about what kind of system you are supporting and you are signing your life with, and then make the decision to decide whether it'll be worth it to just make a few more bucks. I know that that's a lot of bucks, but again, you have to ask yourself that question. California-born athlete, freestyle ski star Eileen Gu also joined China's team. She announced her intent to switch in June 2019. However, unlike Zhu, 18-year-old Gu has allegedly charmed the Chinese public by speaking fluent Mandarin and being well-versed in Chinese culture. The teen had grown up spending summers in Beijing. I want to talk more about Eileen Gu in a separate video. Let me know whether you want to listen to it. But my speculation is, or my theory is that the reason why she didn't get as much backlash as Zhu Yi is because she's even more elitist. I'm just telling you that. There's nothing wrong with her being super great at everything, and I admire her for that. But like, just as an observer of China issues, I think she is extremely smart, not just book smart. She also has the street intelligence, and along with her mother, they really understand China, and they play it by their rules really well, because when you speak Chinese as a foreign-looking foreigner or a foreign-looking person, you give Chinese people this illusion that you are coming to China to study, to learn from them. You actually make them feel better about themselves. Therefore, they will like you more. And if you come to China, get all the benefits, and yet you don't speak Chinese, you make them feel inferior, actually, because it almost feels like you're just here to take things from them without getting to know about the Chinese culture, which I do think if you're going to benefit from some country, at least you have to learn their culture and their language, because it'll only be fair to the taxpayers in those countries whose money goes into your pocket. And again, I'm not bashing Eileen Gu for it, but I just think she might be an extremely smart opportunist, and I want to talk about her maybe in the future. So that's my commentary on Zhu Yi's situation, and I wonder what's your thought on this piece of news, and please leave it in the comment section below. Thank you so much for watching. I'll hopefully see you soon in the next video. Take care.